Airbus 380 is gone. The Boeing 747 is gone. But the demand for giant aircraft is still here. Emirates will be flying A380s into the 2040s. Lufthansa dragged theirs out of the desert. British Airways, Qantas, and Korean Air all brought back the super jumbos. Everyone said we were finished. So, if airlines are still begging for massive jets, why did Boeing and Airbus stop building them? And who is actually going to build the next one? Right now, three radically different paths are emerging. A stretch 777-10, a super A350 called the A350-2000, and a €20 billion A380 neo-fantasy Emirates keeps trying to resurrect. On paper, the industry should already have its next super jumbo. In reality, no manufacturer has committed, no program has launched, and the world's biggest airlines are running out of time. So what happened? Why does the market clearly want a new 450 to 500-seat aircraft, yet no one is building it? The thing is, the super jumbo was supposed to be obsolete and inefficient, a relic of hub-and-spoke thinking. But airports didn't get that memo. Slot constraints are getting worse, not better. London Heathrow operates at around 80 to 85 slots per hour during peaks, completely maxed out under its annual cap of around 480,000 movements. Paris, Charles de Gaulle handles up to 120 slots during peak waves. Frankfurt is limited to 104 movements in the peaks. Munich, Zurich, and Amsterdam are all capped. You can't just add flights. When demand grows, there is physically no room. Asian hubs face the same squeeze. So airlines have one option: put more seats on each departure, and the need is intensifying. Global travel demands continue to rise. Middle Eastern hubs are growing fastest. Emirates, Qatar, and Turkish Airlines are betting heavily on high-density connecting traffic. India's aviation boom is accelerating the country toward third-largest market status. China is returning to growth. Europe has exceeded 2019 traffic levels. Nearly 1,000 aircraft are entering their retirement window in the 2030s and 2040s. That 777-300ER fleet alone, the backbone of long-haul flying for 2 decades, represents hundreds of aircraft needing successors globally. 251 A380s were built, and 833 777-300ERs were delivered. Most of those 1,000-plus aircraft will hit retirement age in the 2030s and 2040s. Put simply, the industry is about to retire hundreds of 350 to 550-seat jets, and right now, nothing in production truly replaces them. At the 2025 Dubai Air Show in November, Emirates made a move. They ordered 65 more 777-9s. They publicly said it would support Boeing's study for something bigger, the 777-10. It is a stretch of the 777-9. Theoretical specifications imply the 777-10 would welcome up to 450 to 500 passengers in a 2-class configuration. Emirates made sure they could convert its last 777-9 orders if this thing actually gets built. The catch is that the 777-9 has not entered service and Boeing's cash reserves are not up to the task right now. The company currently has other priorities. Why is Boeing even considering it? Emirates explicitly requested the aircraft. The GE9X engines give enough thrust if certified for a bigger maximum takeoff weight. The engineering path could be relatively straightforward, but stretching a twin jet to 500 seats creates real challenges. Takeoff performance with an engine out becomes critical. If one engine fails during takeoff with 500 people on board, you need enough thrust and control authority to keep climbing safely. That is harder with a longer, heavier airframe. Then there are tail strike margins. The longer the fuselage, the easier it is to scrape the tail during rotation. Boeing designed an electronic system for the 777X, but the 777-10 could push those limits even further. Such a long twin jet at that weight also demands long runways and good conditions. It is strictly a big hub airplane. Adding length means a heavier airframe, which means reduced range. Compared to the 777-9, the 777-10 would not have enough range for ultra-long-haul Project Sunrise routes, but it would be more than sufficient for the world's busiest routes. Now, for the seat math. A typical Emirates A380 seats around 500 passengers. A 777-10 could seat around 460 to 480 in 2 classes, or over 500 in high density for Emirates. That is potentially 20 to 40 fewer seats per aircraft compared to the A380. To match the capacity of 40 A380s, roughly 20,000 seats, you would need around 42 to 44 777-10s. You are not getting a like-for-like replacement, but you are getting close. And because twin jets burn less fuel per seat and need similar maintenance infrastructure, the economics work. Realistically, only a handful of airlines worldwide can consistently fill 470 to 500 seats on enough routes to justify a fleet. The 777-10 is the most likely to be built and most likely to be ordered in large numbers. But Boeing isn't the only one paying attention. While Boeing grabs headlines, Airbus is quietly studying something just as ambitious: the A350-2000. A stretch could lengthen the fuselage of the A350-1000 by 9 to 10 meters. Estimated capacity is 430 to 450 seats. It would be more efficient than a 777-10 on shorter routes thanks to the lighter A350 platform. And because the A350-1000 is already certified, an A350-2000 could enter service faster with a less risky certification path. Airbus CEO Christian Scherer confirmed at the 2025 Dubai Air Show that multiple airlines are asking for it. His exact words were, "People pretty much everywhere are talking to us about it." The strategic purpose is clear. The A350-2000 directly counters the 777-9 and 777-10. It replaces 777-300ERs for airlines that have gotten tired of waiting for the 777X certification. Most importantly, it gives Airbus dominance in the high-capacity twin-jet market. But Airbus hasn't launched it yet. Why? It wants Emirates, Qatar, and major European carriers as anchor customers, and it is wary of overreacting to Emirates' demands after the A380 experience taught them expensive lessons about niche aircraft. Scherer admitted Airbus isn't fundamentally resource-constrained, but it needs to phase engineering resources carefully. That translates to, "We can build it, we just need the business case first." That business case hinges on Emirates. Tim Clark, the president of Emirates, is playing both sides, pushing Boeing for the 777-10 while texting Scherer constantly about the A350-2000. But Clark made one thing clear: the A350-2000 needs a more powerful engine. Airbus insists the current Trent XWB-97 can handle it with minor upgrades. Clark wants more thrust for Middle Eastern hot and high operations, which would force Rolls-Royce into a semi-new engine variant and slow everything down. So the A350-2000 is viable and technologically feasible, just not imminent. Which brings us to the option that refuses to die. Tim Clark won't let it go. He has pitched Airbus on a modernized A380 with composite wings and fuselage improvements, a slimmer tail, a lighter structure, and Rolls-Royce UltraFan engines. His blueprint promises a 20 to 25% improvement in fuel burn. Clark has been clear about his vision, saying, "I still have the design in front of Airbus." Airbus's response is, "Give us 20 billion euros and we will build it." Translation: impossible unless someone else pays for development. Reactivating an A380 you already own is cheap. Spending 20 to 30 billion euros to develop and certify a new 4-engine version for essentially one customer is completely different. Airbus burned billions on the original A380 program and finally shut down production in 2021. The Toulouse assembly line is now pumping out A321neos. Restarting A380 production, especially a composite super jumbo, would cost more than the entire A350 program development. The UltraFan is not yet certified. Rolls-Royce ran a ground test in 2023, but the engine won't be flight-ready until at least 2030. By then, Boeing and Airbus will already be delivering twin-jet super jumbos, and the critical problem is that no other airline will buy it except Emirates. Today, Emirates operates 95 to 96 A380s with plans to reach 110 active by late 2026. Singapore Airlines has 12. British Airways has 12. Lufthansa has 8. That is not a global market. That is Emirates and some stragglers. Clark argues that airports need 500-seat aircraft to manage slot constraints. He is absolutely right, but airlines are scared of niche fleet types, and they don't need 4 engines to get 500 seats. A twin-jet alternative, whether it is the 777-10 or the A350-2000, satisfies 90% of the use case at dramatically lower costs. The A380neo is dead, not because airlines don't want big planes, but because they don't want 4 engines. So, if the A380neo is fantasy, why should manufacturers bother with any super jumbo? Because airlines keep proving the demand never disappeared. Post-pandemic, A380 reactivations told the whole story. Lufthansa, British Airways, Qantas, Korean Air, All Nippon Airways, and Etihad all brought the A380 back. These weren't nostalgic decisions, they were economic necessities. Most reactivated A380s are flying on peak trunk routes, exactly the missions a future 450 to 500-seat twin-jet would take over. Because slot constraints force upgauging, British Airways can't add more Heathrow departures, So they run A380s to Los Angeles, Johannesburg, and Boston. Lufthansa can't expand Munich, so A380s handle high-demand transatlantic runs. Singapore Airlines flies them to London and Sydney. Network evolution is intensifying this need. Gulf carriers and Turkish Airlines rely heavily on high-density hub operations. Ultra-long-haul routes are growing. Big aircraft will transform from being optional to being necessary. So who is looking at these stretches? Emirates, Qatar, Airways, Turkish Airlines, British Airways, Lufthansa, and Singapore Airlines. US majors are unlikely. They prefer frequency over size. Chinese megacarriers could swing the entire market if they ever commit to high-capacity hub models. With Chinese and Indian growth factored in, the total addressable market over 20 years is probably 250 to 350 aircraft. The question is, which manufacturer moves first? The consensus is taking shape: a twin-engine jet with 450 to 500 seats, one deck, an ultra-long fuselage, and composite-heavy construction to replace the 777-300ER and A380 capacity. But there is also a wild card. Both manufacturers could simply decide the risk isn't worth it. But remember the seat math. A 777-10 does not perfectly replace an A380, but it gets close. You need more aircraft to move the same number of passengers, and that might actually be fine, because the real successor to the A380 was never going to be another double-decker. It was always going to be a twin jet that could deliver most of the capacity at 70% of the operating cost. Whether one of these jets actually gets built will decide what long-haul flying looks like for the rest of the century.